Crazy Damn Canadians, episode 2, and we're sitting here with Selen Alpay, noted philanthropist, the owner of Canadian Tire, was a mobster in Italy at one time. We actually don't know. I don't know anything about Selen Alpay, so really interested. We're going to ask him the questions. Scott, why don't you ask the first question and start the conversation with Selen?
You know what? Well, first of all, Selen, thank you so much for being here today. It really is an honor for both Dave and myself to have you in the driver's seat on Crazy Damn Canadians. And the theme of this show is really to unearth these inspiring stories from individuals across Canada, past and present. So we're just going to start right away. And who are 3 Canadians who inspire you? It could be from decades ago, it could be currently, it could be famous people, it could be family members. So just throwing out a loaded question.
First of all, I have to say thank you for having me on with you guys, and you guys are very well respected gentlemen in this community too, and do lots of amazing things. And you know, I learn from people like you guys. So it's hard to pick specific people. I can pick one for sure. Michael Pinball Clemens is one of my best friends and biggest mentors. I would say you asked for Canadians, but I would say on the same level as the Dalai Lama, if you will, and Nelson Mandela. And I believe in their teachings and about doing the right thing. And Pinball Clemens is very much like that. But you know what? Prince George is such a great place. There are so many inspiring people like that. So, you know, I would have to say like the entire community inspires me and tries to make me better.
Amazing. Can we actually just go back to Pinball Clemens, and maybe we can bring our listeners up to speed on how you actually met him, because it was at a UNBC Legacy breakfast?
It was at a UNBC Legacy breakfast that we sponsored, and we had Pinball Clemens in for as the guest speaker. And I didn't know Pinball. I watched him play football for the Argos for many, many years, and he was an incredible athlete for sure. But I didn't know the other side. He'd be an interesting guy to do this, to learn about. It's kind of like I'm not like Pinball, but he's a pretty amazing guy to get to know. We met him at the Legacy breakfast. They surprised me by bringing him to my office for over 4 hours. We had an amazing talk. Like, I was inspired right away. Within the first half hour, he told me I should come to Kenya with him because he was building schools in Africa at the time. And I said immediately, yeah, when do we go? So that was interesting. About an hour and a half later, he was telling me how he was reorganizing his board of directors. And within 12 to 18 months, he would need a new director on his board, and would I be interested? And I said, sign me up. When do I start?
And that's for his foundation?
And that's for his foundation. And now currently I chair his foundation, which is a stretch because we're all the way here and he's all the way in Toronto, but it works. So, yeah.
I can already tell we're going to be all over the place, because that's a question now I want to know the answer to. But I think we missed something. I have all these questions because I genuinely want to know who the heck is Selen Alpay. Where are you from? Like, are you from Prince George, born and raised?
No,
I didn't know that.
I was born in Istanbul, Turkey. We left there when I was 9 months old. My dad was a university prof, and he took a sabbatical leave. The university in Istanbul didn't know he was never coming back, but that was his plan. And we came to Detroit, Michigan. He took on a sabbatical at Wayne State University. And then 2 years later, the University of Waterloo signed him up, and we moved there. And Kitchener-Waterloo is my hometown. That's where my mom still lives today.
I've been there a few times. It's a beautiful place. I've walked around there late into the evening because Sun Life's head office is there.
Oh, right. Yeah, for sure.
So we'd go to do national school there for training and got to walk around there. It's a great place.
Yeah, that's my original home place, I guess. I can't go back to Istanbul because I didn't do any military service there, and they'll do terrible things to a person like me if I were to go back.
So you're not even allowed to go back to visit?
No. And Canada can't get you out of the country that you were born in.
Wow. Has it kind of been on your bucket list to want to go back there?
No. And I suppose, and as we get talking, you guys know a lot of this anyway, but that's why my friends are so important to me in my life, because family didn't mean anything to me, really. It was like my mom, my dad, my sister. My dad and I did not get along, and that was not a nice part of my life. And my sister is much like my father, so I don't really particularly like her as well. And my mother is she was always the mediator, God bless her, and so her and I are close.
Yeah. So she was always playing the United Nations role, trying to make everyone.
I mean, the problem with my dad was he was 68 when he passed away, and I was only 18. So a huge generation gap.
Wow.
So we didn't see eye to eye on anything. We argued black was white. You know, we were unkind to each other. Never were the words love spoken ever. So it was. Though the positive part about that, though, because I always like to try to pick something positive out of anything that happens to you over the course of a day, an hour, a week, whatever. And with respect to my dad, so I'm going to call it was a burden to be with him for 18 years, but I learned what not to be like, and I appreciated that. Ooh. So I learned something from the man.
Do you know what? That's a powerful statement. Yeah. That's a Scott McWalter statement, though.
Even
when I pose questions, Scott always says, don't just ask the hard question. Always ask, what did you learn from that? Mm-hmm. What positive came out of it? If he catches me make a Facebook post and it's a little bit too whiny about some struggles I've gone through, he'll be like, Dave, where's the positive in that? Like, you've always got to add that to it.
Absolutely.
So I love hearing you say that.
Yeah, it's true. And I've learned that from Canadian Tire dealers that I used to work for. Some things you got a lot of positive things from those individuals. Two of the ones that I worked with, one was not a PR guy by any stretch of the imagination. I wouldn't treat my worst enemy the way he treated some of his staff. So there was a learning from that. And then there were other guys who were phenomenally brilliant that I learned a lot from too. So
it's amazing how you can learn from each of those personas.
100%. And you don't have to like the person. You can still learn a lot from people.
So you own, I mean, obviously well known for owning Canadian Tire, but 18-year-old you, were you guys still in Waterloo, Kitchener at that time?
Yes.
Is that what you wanted to be? A business owner?
I didn't know what I wanted to be at 18. And at 18, I was a rebel. And there are lots of stories that I can't even share with you in this room. Brooklyn knows them, but we wouldn't share those because I was not a good kid. I was a horrible kid. I was a rebel. I think part of that was because of my father. He was a university professor, and he demanded that I go to university or get out of his house. So I got out of his house because I was not going to. And it was because he wanted me to do that. I rebelled, and I didn't. And in retrospect, do I regret that? I don't know. I don't have any regrets in my life, or I wouldn't be where I am today and be as fortunate and blessed as I am. So there's that. So yeah, I was a rebel. It could have easily gone the other way, where I could have had a really horrible life.
How many places have you lived? Like after you left, you didn't go to university, so where'd you go?
Lived in well, he passed away at 18 when I was 18. So I had just left the house, and I had to go back because my mother at the time didn't work. She was a housewife and a homemaker. So I stuck around because my father had two rental units in a small town away from Kitchener-Waterloo, and there were still mortgage payments to be made on those. So I made those payments because that was going to be her income. Yeah. So I stayed in that house until I got married, and I had to take a loan out to get married, but we did that. So Kitchener-Waterloo I know for a long time. I lived in Toronto for a number of years. I worked in a Canadian Tire store in Kitchener-Waterloo for 11 years. I applied to become a Canadian Tire dealer. They told me I was too young. I was devastated. I said, what are you talking about? I feel like I got one foot in the grave. I'm ready to go. Let's go. But the answer was still no. So I remember this lady, she told me that I needed to take a risk and move somewhere else. So we packed up and moved to Toronto, which is only an hour away. But so I managed a store in Toronto. And then 3.5 years later, I got my first store.
And where was that?
And it was in a little town called Amherstburg, Ontario. It's just south of Windsor, Ontario. It's a beautiful place right on the lake. Yeah.
So how'd you end up in Prince George then? How many years have you been here for?
That's crazy because we've been here for 13.5 years. And like most people in Prince George, I had a 3-4 year plan. And almost 14 years later, here we are. And I know there are a lot of people that have the same story, and they're talking about, that was 30, 40 years ago, So I'm in with a lot of good people.
Our last interview was with Shirley Bond, and it's one of the first things she mentions. Everybody plans to come for a year and then just ends up here.
Yeah.
You just end up not leaving. That seems to be a common theme.
And what are the characteristics she attributed that to in the communities, the people? She said it's very hard to find kinder human beings in Prince George.
100%. Like, we should be the capital of the world for volunteerism. There are so many good people in this town that do so many things. So when you ask about inspiring Canadians, well, I would say the population of Prince George, they are very, very inspiring people.
That's a good summary as a collective.
Yeah.
And I would agree with you.
Yeah.
Wholeheartedly, I would agree with you. Like, as someone who's been heavily involved in philanthropy most of my adult life, that's the overwhelming sense. That's why I have such a huge amount of pride about the community we live in, because collectively it's just awesome.
I think
that's what's difficult about things like this. You're talking to one person who's just a cog in a wheel, because there's so many inspiring people that have made such a big difference. And Dave, I'm going to apologize again for Citizen of the Year, because you were there and listened to my 20-minute rant, which was only supposed to be 7 minutes. But that was very important to me, because I invited people from the community to that event because I wanted them to share in that, because really they were the Citizens of the Year as well. That wasn't just me, it was all of them too. And there was 100 of them in that room that year, and that's who I spoke about. That's why I've been chastised now by everyone about speaking
not me.
So long. No.
But I agree with you, though, and I do appreciate that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's almost like we have this responsibility to be humble. Like you don't want to brag about what you've done well, but what we want to pick out is that there is characteristics that make certain people try harder to be good, and I kind of want to discuss some of those, or hopefully get a couple of those out. Like, what is it about your past that would make you say, I'm going to try harder? And, we've already gotten a little bit more I didn't know about you, especially about, where you came from. And that's the gem that makes hopefully somebody else go, I struggled when I was younger, and this is who you became. Well, that's who I can become. Those are the stories that can have an impact that you have to share. So anyways, I appreciate
as well
that.
as the belief that some people have when they look at somebody in a position of success, that it was just a smooth road to get there, that there was no hurdles or bumps in the road.
Oh, yeah.
Where really it can look like this, very volatile.
That was my life, for sure. That was my life, starting with my father, bad relationship. I don't think I had any drive, because he wanted me to go to school, and that was the be all to end all. I got a part-time job. I got sick, of all things. I was working in a tire factory for a couple of years and did all kinds of crazy shifts. And I got sick, and I was off work for like 6 months. And then a buddy of mine got me this job at a Canadian Tire store. And that's when things started to change, and I thought differently of things, and that was important. He was a major supporter in my life. And then I had another guy when I was thinking about getting a Canadian Tire store, and I probably owe him a lot. We were friends. He was And he was gay in a time that everybody was in the closet, but I didn't think anything more of him than one of my best friends. And as it turned out, he played a significant role in my success, because one day he asked me how much money I had in my bank account. And I'm 18. I happen to have $2,000. He goes, "Good, we're buying a house." I'm like, "No, I am not buying a house. You might be, but I am not." He goes, No, you got to trust me. We're both going to buy this house and watch what happens." So sure enough, back in the day in Kitchener-Waterloo, the market was smoking hot. We bought our first house. We spent not even a month painting and redecorating a little bit, and both of us made $5,000 each net. I thought, man, this is a great gig, not a good gig. It's a great gig. So both of us went on our own, and I kept flipping houses, and that's how because I don't come from money. My dad was the cheapest guy you'd ever know. And so I kept flipping houses, and this was a good deal. And then finally I had enough money to put in for a Canadian Tire store.
And they rejected you at first?
Yeah.
Said no way?
It was devastating. That was devastating to me. No, go out for another 3 years and work in another store. And I did the same thing. I built relationships with the staff, and we got into work every morning knowing we were going to crush it for the day. And those were very inspiring people who motivated me as well to do better and better.
So when did you get married? How old were you?
I was 25 years old when I got married, and I'm married to a wonderful woman who has put up with me and all my craziness for the last 38 years. She's a godsend in my life too.
And I don't know, kids you have?
No,
kids?
We don't actually. No, we don't have any of our own kids. We always thought, and maybe it's a selfish thing, but it just is what it is. It's a choice. We decided we didn't want kids. We were more interested in our freedom. And I don't know how much more freedom she got. I got a lot of freedom. I don't know how much more she got. But we have lots of kids in our lives who are our nieces and nephews. In fact, it would have been less expensive to have our own kids. But we have lots of them.
Isn't it interesting looking back at the trajectory of your life and just realizing that if just one little thing didn't happen, what if that friend of yours didn't recommend that you go apply at Canadian Tire? You could be living a much different life right now.
A much different life. I don't know what that would look like. And, I was teetering between good and evil, and it could have gone either way. I think I could have easily been out on the streets if it hadn't have been for that guy. So,
maybe that's where the compassion comes from.
Yeah, maybe.
Right?
Maybe because I feel like we talk about this often. We talk about paying it forward. So I feel like I owe a debt, and never mind the debt. I think about that a lot. I'm very, very fortunate. I've been very blessed in my life, but for that you need to pay it forward, I think, and that's what we try to do.
So
try to emulate.
I've heard people toss numbers around, and actually I really don't care what the number that you donate is, and so you don't have to say it because we're not asking for that. But I know that you donate a lot. I know that the philanthropy has been a big part, and I know that you've cut a lot of big checks in this community because I've seen them. And at the end of the day, I'm getting a sense of why you do it. You've got to pay it forward and give back. And you're around generous people in a community, which makes you say, I'm going to be part of that because it's such a giving community. It's like getting caught up in I call it fun. I call it fun. Some people question me on that.
It's inspirational, right? To be around such positive people. You want to be better. You want to do better all the time, and you want to up your game all the time. So to your point, Dave, like for us to sponsor anything with the Cougars, I mean, I don't do that because I think it's going to sell more hockey sticks in my store. That we do because we want to tell the community who we are so proud of. We want to tell the community that, we are a fabric of this community as well. And we want you to know that, and we appreciate you for that. So a lot of the things that we do that way are for that reason, so that people know that we're a part of this community. there
That's-
are there are of course other things that are way more personal, and again, Brooklyn knows about those, and those are very near and dear to me, and they're close to my heart, and we do those. I guess for me the litmus test is this: if it's the right thing to do, then just do the right thing, and that's the litmus test. I shouldn't say this, but some people ask me, well, do you have a budget for what you do?
Mm-hmm.
And I would tell you, we don't. If it's the right thing to do, we're just going to do it, and we'll figure it out.
But that's exactly where I was heading. Mm-hmm. One of the things I struggle with, and Scott struggles with, is once you start doing good and people see you doing good, it opens the floodgate of requests. And you can't do everything. You can't solve every problem in this community. It has to be the community doing it. But once you're seen in the forefront of giving, it can become overwhelming. As we were prepping for this podcast, I got a request to help somebody replace someone's vehicle was broken into, replace all of their tools that were stolen. And they said, Dave Mathis, will you help replace all these tools? And I thought to myself, I can't afford to buy somebody a whole new set of tools. Hopefully they have some insurance. And then we were reflecting upon it. I wonder what Sellen's life is like with requests. So can you speak to that? What's it like? You couldn't possibly say yes to everybody. How do you struggle with that?
Again, I'm in a very fortunate position where the major gifts I'll make the calls on, right? The smaller things like donations for
like a fundraiser,
like for a fundraiser,
whatever,
yeah, that kind of thing. I have two people that do that on staff. My general manager looks after those, and our HR manager looks after those. I can't even tell you how much that is. I don't know. It's a line item on my statement, but I don't know what it is. So they and then their instructions like don't say no to anything. Now, if we're talking about somebody who's having a stag and doe and they're getting married, well, I'm not as apt to help them out. I don't even know you. Like, why would I do that? So sometimes you get some very bizarre asks, but for the most part, we don't say no.
Oh my God, that's such a weird answer. That's not what I expected you to say.
No, we don't. I don't like. Well, it's hard. I don't know how to say no.
Now, our listeners aren't going to understand that there's a young lady sitting in the corner. Her name is Brooklyn. Brooklyn, what is your role? And I'll just repeat it into the microphone.
Actually, maybe Sellen can introduce her.
Yeah.
Like, how are Brooklyn and you friends and connected?
So I've known Brooklyn's mom for a long time, and we met 4 years ago. Brooklyn came to work at our store, and she was a part-time cashier, and she was a delight to have on staff because her positivity comes through, and I just love hanging around very positive people, and she's very much that person. And she's she's for real. She's authentic. She's wise beyond her years.
Is she your security? Is she monitoring us?
Right now, yes, she's my security blanket.
All right.
I may have not been able to do this if she wasn't in the room. So, and I would tell you that Brooklyn is my best friend. We've shared a lot of things. We may get into this after too when we talk more about philanthropy. But last year, so Brooklyn doesn't work at our store anymore, and that was the right move for her to make to get on with life. But we have not stopped being friends. In fact, we're closer than ever, probably. But last Christmas, in fact, we shared a very, very amazing, magical experience. And Brooklyn came to Kenya with me, where we were building schools through Pinball Clemens Foundation, and it's always an experience for me because that was my fourth or fifth time to Africa. But to be able to see it through her eyes and some other people's eyes who'd never been there before, to see it through their eyes was pretty magical. And she took a lot away from that. And
I didn't know you did that. I've done that also myself. I went with my friend Richie Apia, who's a local kid in town. Yeah. And his village, he said he challenged me to go build a school in Ghana with him. Yeah. not through any organization. We went to the Cougars and sold cupcakes at a hockey game, and then we threw pub nights at the Westwood and raised a bunch of money. Jordy Hoover sold an African wine in all of his beer stores. We got $1 from every bottle, and we raised money and built a school in Ghana. So I think that's awesome that we have that connection between us. You've done that.
So great experience, and that was just magical. And since then we've done other things too, and we have a lot of other things on our bucket list to do as well. So we built schools in Kenya. Now this is through the Pinball Clemens Foundation, and the Pinball Clemens Foundation supported We, and We is the one that builds the schools in Kenya. But through the funds that we raised through the Pinball Clemens Foundation over a period of 12 or 13 years, we've built 231 schools in 9 third world countries. So another reason I'm so proud to be part of the Pinball Clemens Foundation. My wife and I have built 3 schools in Kenya, but there's no shortage of things to do in this world.
Yeah,
we have to repeat that number one more time. 231 schools
in 9 third world countries.
Unreal.
Yeah.
Just think about that number of school in northern BC. That's probably the amount of schools in northern BC, and those have been built in 9 third world countries.
So in Kenya specifically, our claim to fame, I guess, is sending 15,000 kids to school every day, which is super cool. But then that gets thrown out of balance when you're in Nairobi. So where we have the schools is a 45-minute small airplane ride out of Nairobi, and you land in the Masai Mara, which is a desert. So, and there's no landing strip. Like, you land on this red earth, which is crazy. But anyway, but in Nairobi, on the way to the airport to get to the Masai Mara, we go past a slum, and it's huge. It's massive. So we're really excited about these 15,000 kids that go to school, but the population of that slum is 1 million people.
Yeah. And that puts it in perspective.
And that puts it into perspective. So hopefully the hope is that those 15,000 young people that are going to school are going to make a difference in that.
Yeah.
And
they will. And that's been proven. That's why you're doing it.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Education is the cure, right?
Yeah, for sure.
To a lot of society's problems.
And that's key for was key for We. And it's key for Pinball Clemens Foundation too, because a lot of the work we do is locally in Toronto, and we try to bridge the gap for those who can't afford post-secondary school, and get them to post-secondary school so they can do amazing things going forward as well.
So your friends. Go ahead, Scott.
Just talking about the mindset of pure gratitude that both Brooklyn and you must come home to Prince George with. After seeing that 1 million person plus slum, after being in Africa, and just coming back to Prince George and being so grateful for all the privileges that we have here in this community. It must be, both for Brooklyn and you, doing it 5 times yourself to Africa, just must be inspiring to come back and have that greater sense of appreciation for what we have here.
Every single day. We take so much for granted. A friend of mine recently said that, North Americans are drowning in privilege. Mm-hmm. And that really comes to light when you come home from a trip like that, for sure. Yeah. So and maybe every time I go away on a trip like that, it inspires me to be better and to do more, give more, or what have you. And that's why I don't have to work anymore. I could retire, but I can't retire because I want to be able to afford all the things I'm doing, in all these communities. So there's a couple others that we do too. I've always wanted to build a hospital somewhere. So I was speaking to We at one point, and they called me one day and they said, "Listen, we have a hospital. Does it?" And they know my passion for Africa, and they asked if it had to be in Africa. I'm like, no, it needs to be where it needs to be. So this particular one was in Haiti, and they had an existing hospital down there, but it was dilapidated. They didn't even have any power to the place. Like, they were delivering babies by the light of a cell phone flashlight. That's how they were delivering babies. We were supposed to go down there sort of on a reconnaissance mission to see what this hospital project was going to be like last February, but the political landscape in Haiti is horrible. And Canada even told you, there was a travel advisory not to go to Haiti, so we didn't get to go, and we didn't get to start on this project. But they also needed a solar panel system, so I invested in a solar panel system. So at least now they have power, so that they're not delivering babies in the dark, and that was a big deal. And they were very gracious about that too. I guess they sent up a helicopter to take an aerial view over this hospital, and that was mind blowing. And I mean, that felt good. It was rewarding. I mean, some of these things we do because it feels good at the end of the day, and that certainly was one of those things.
I've seen quite a few pictures online. I mean, there's the philanthropy side to you, but we want to know about the other side of you, which I think many people may not, but we're both friends with Kyle Sampson. So you have a few of these younger, energetic, outstanding human beings in your life. And Kyle, I would say, is an outstanding human being. He's very exceptional and unusual. He's been the human being who's infuriated me more than anyone else in my entire life. And he's also one of my closest friends. And he's close friends with you, and I keep watching these highly unusual things. I'm like, you are going with Selen Alpay, who could be your dad, and you are going to watch who? And I think did you guys see the Rolling Stones?
We saw the Rolling Stones a year and a half ago, yeah.
So what's the deal with this? How did you meet Kyle? How did you become friends with Kyle? Because he's a city councilor in Prince George. He's 25 years old.
Yeah, but that's... I like surrounding myself with lots of young people because I don't ever want to miss out. I have a horrible case of FOMO. I have this horrible fear of missing out on anything and everything. And all my young friends keep me current, and they inspire me. I can't use the cell phone unless it was Brooklyn helping me with it, right? And so people like that keep me current, and Kyle does the same thing. And he's an extraordinary guy, and there's so many extraordinary people, but he's become a very good friend of mine too.
Yeah.
He knows a lot of Sellen stories that I'm not so proud of, and that's okay because we have that type of relationship, so that's good. But we also both of us also have this extraordinary love for music. I remember the first time I met him, it was at a function at the Civic Center, and we got talking music, and I think we were still there at 1:30 in the morning talking. We had to go to a concert together, and he was trying to talk me into going to see Kiss in Moscow, of all places. And I'm like, dude, if we're going to go to Moscow, we need to go for 2 weeks, and, the concert will be the icing on the cake. But, so we had planned that, but it never happened. We did get to the Rolling Stones together. That was an amazing experience. I love having those magical experiences with people. With Brooklyn, that trip to Africa was a magical experience. But there's so many magical experiences that we have in our lives, and the Stones with Kyle was one of them. Plus, we were standing. The only thing between us and the stage at that concert was the barrier. And so we were right in the front row, and we were making friends with all the people in the front row because, if you had to have a washroom break or get a beer or whatever you had to do, people would hold their place. I have never given out so many business cards in one place as I did at that concert. And they were great people. Like, it was because we were there for the same reasons, and we made a lot of friends with a lot of great people that night. And when Mick Jagger was walking back and forth across the stage, we were only 15 feet away from him. It was brilliant.
Who's some of your favorite people in Prince George? Just a couple. Can you think of anyone that stands out where you're like, that's just a rock solid human being?
Well, Shirley Bond is one of those people.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be speaking out of school when I say this. I've never had any respect for politicians. I don't support any politicians. But the day I met Shirley Bond changed my tune specifically about her. And I've supported Shirley any way I possibly can because of my deepest respect for that lady. And she changed my thinking on a lot of politicians. Not on all, but some.
And that was the conversation that we had with Shirley too, is just that sometimes these generalizations can exist where people lump all politicians into one category. We feel like just our conversation with Shirley in the previous podcast is the ability for people to see the real human behind the political persona.
It'd be easy to generalize the super rich white guy who owns a box store in College Heights and just sum you up as that. Just some rich guy, probably has too much money, owns a big corporate store, and say that's who Selen is and that's it. And that's the whole point with Shirley, with you, with me, with, you know.
It doesn't matter how much money you have. It's what you give back. So this is the musical side of me. So there's a song by Tesla, and it's called. Do you know who Tesla is?
Oh yeah.
I know. I knew
rock band, right?
I said to Brooklyn, I knew you'd know, but I didn't think you'd know. And anyway, the name of the song is "What You Give." What you give. Yeah. Now it's a love song, but if you look up the lyrics, it works. So it's not about what you get; it's what you give.
Ah, it's great.
You're right.
My brother loved that song.
Yeah, I love that song.
And I really truly believe that regardless of what position you are in life, there's always an opportunity to positively influence others.
100%. And it doesn't have to be about money. I'm blessed and fortunate enough that I can write some checks. And you know what? Writing the checks is the easy part. The hard part are done by some pretty amazing things. I mean, you talk about Relay for Life or Cops for Cancer and things like that. And there's so many of them. Wheelin Warriors. There's so many of them, right? And they're doing such great and hard work. So like, I feel like I owe that to them, and I owe that to the community.
Yeah, there's a lot. You're right, and a lot of the time I'll find myself doing that, just writing a check. But the hours that you can put in and the effort you can put in is equal or greater a lot of the time.
I agree, and I can't. And my problem, and that's what keeps me busy and not getting enough sleep at night, because I can't just write the check. I got to be involved some way too, otherwise it doesn't feel right. And anybody can be involved in anything. It's not about money. Time is a huge deal. Until COVID hit us, every Thursday I go to Simon Fraser Lodge and I help play bingo with a lot of the residents there who have become my very near and dear friends. And a lot of times on Thursday afternoons, I'd come out of there thinking, wow, I don't know what they got out of that, but I sure got a lot out of it.
Yeah.
You know, so
and to me that's
about time.
To me that's what's always impressed me the most in terms of your contributions is the monetary value. That goes a long way and helps a lot of organizations, but I always see you putting the time in. And let's use Wheelin Warriors for an example. It's not just handing over some kind of sponsorship check and saying congratulations on helping the BC Cancer Foundation, wishing you all the luck. You've developed an amazing friendship with Karen Piche and James.
Yeah.
You're at every single banquet. You attend the YMCA training classes. You come down as an ambassador. You help out with
But
the
that
trucks.
goes to my point. All those people that you just mentioned, holy man, they are inspiring people. And they drive me to do better and to do more and to do whatever I can do. Yeah. I mean, you can ride the bike, Scott. I can't. Well, maybe one day.
You can ride the bike. How did you meet Karen?
Oh, man, Karen can tell that story much better than I can. The first time I was nominated for Citizen of the Year, she went to that event with someone, I can't remember whom, and she said to the person that she was with, I need to meet that guy. And the person told her, well, go to the store, he'll talk to you. He'll talk to you about anything, which is true. I'll talk to anybody about anything. And so she came in, and we talked in my office for a couple hours, and there's another individual who's so authentic, and what you see is what you get. And I'm the same way. I'm the worst poker player known to mankind because I play with my cards face up. And that's what Karen's like too. And then she was telling me about Wheelin Warriors and what she's into, and I thought, wow, I want to help for sure.
I got to admit something to you. I once went to Karen. I mean, I've seen you. I've talked to you a few times, said hi, but I've never really had a conversation with you. And I needed something. I can't remember. We were going to do a fundraiser, and I wanted to use Canadian Tire's location. We were raising money for a kid with cancer. I can't remember which cause it was. I hate that I can't remember that. But we were doing
so many.
We were doing them a lot back then. We were doing one a week. And I went and I said, I need to talk to Selen Alpay to get permission to do this. And so I called Karen, knowing she knows you. And she's like, why don't you just ask him? I'm like, I don't want to talk to him. There's no way he's going to say yes to me or even want to talk to me. That's what I said. And she's like, are you stupid? She goes, he's going to talk to you. And all of a sudden, she had you call me, I think, or text me.
I think so. I remember what you're talking about.
And so I was like, oh, well, you just don't know, though. Because even myself, who I'm not shy to talk to anybody, but even I have preconceived notions in my head, which is why I said I'd love to talk to Selen Alpay and see who he is more. Because even I would be hesitant to go talk to someone who I deem to, I don't know, I hate saying that because I hate that whole mentality, but, you
Me
know,
too.
Being above you, that's kind of how we all do it.
Yeah.
But that should never be. That's like, I can tell you, if you spoke to my staff, if you spoke to any of my staff from any of the 4 stores I've owned in my career, and you asked them the question, what's it like working for Selen Alpay? And they will immediately stop you and say, I didn't work for Selen Alpay. I worked with Selen Alpay.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal to me. That's so important.
Yeah. So being approachable is important,
You
right?
got to be. They're my biggest asset. I don't have any asset in that building more important than my team. They're incredible people, and we like to set everybody up for success. We're not about failure, and so.
Ooh, that word.
Yeah.
What's your biggest failure? What's one of the dumbest things you've ever done, or biggest failures, or things where you're like, oh, I shouldn't have done this. I wish I didn't.
You can call it a learning experience if you want.
No.
There's Scott twisting it and saying, and what did you learn from it?
Yeah, I've done a lot. I've done so many dumb things, Dave. I can't even think of one off the top of my head. I probably should have gone to university. I think I even admitted that at a legacy breakfast, and it shocked my general manager for him to hear me say that, because I actually said that I regretted not going to university because I was so rebellious against my father. So.
Yeah, that's a good answer. And that's fair. I mean, we weren't looking for any of the details about the time you stole that pickup truck and crashed it into a liquor store or any story like that.
Well, the story is pretty close to that. In fact, we're all over the road now, but when I first got to this store, I brought my entire management team up to my office and I said, listen, I have a lot to prove to you, and I understand that. I'm going to make you a lot of promises, and I'm going to have to just fulfill them so that I can gain credibility with you. What you see is what you get. Worst poker player ever. Play with my cards face up. You're going to learn that. So a couple of days later, one of my store managers, I had 2 store managers at the time and a general manager, and she asked me, so Sal, you said we could ask you anything we wanted. And I said, yeah, 100%, shoot, go. She goes, okay, I need to ask you this. Have you ever spent any jail time?
No.
Now, why she would ask me a question like that, I have no idea. To this day, I'm not sure why she asked the question. But my response was, listen, no, I've never done any jail time. I may have been, I've been in situations where I probably should have done jail time, but no, I've never done jail time. So that was the response.
I want to back things up just a little bit because we mentioned a mutual friend of all of ours, Kyle Sampson.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually had a really good phone conversation with Kyle, who we're going to bring on as a future guest. And at the beginning of the conversation, he refers to you as Sel. Mm-hmm. And he also referred to you as his best friend. Mm-hmm. And he talked about some of these concert experiences that you guys have shared together. And in addition to that, he also referenced just how much he's learned from you. And I'm sure you've learned from Kyle as well. And then at the end of the conversation, he referred to you as his best friend as well. And so it's this common trait that both of you gentlemen have with Kyle as one of your best friends. Can you, Dave, actually share your story with Kyle Sampson, how you first met him? Because I think you get a kick out of this.
Dave, I know you know this, but I'm going to say it out loud. He has the most profound respect for you. Like, that man honors you like you don't even know. Maybe you do know, but
I didn't until today. Scott told me that in the pool this morning, but I knew we were good friends. But I met him. I owned a DJ service. I was a young kid running a DJ service, and I got a call from an even younger guy. I think he was 14 years old, and I remember answering the phone. I was on a giant pogo stick. We had bought these industrial pogo sticks that you could actually jump over a car on, like they jumped 12 feet high. And we were practicing with him, and my phone rings, and I answered the phone, and it was this. He goes, "Hello, sirs. My name is Kyle Sampson. I would like to come down and apply for a job with your DJ service." And I thought I was being pranked. I was like, "What? Yeah, okay. Well, this is the address we're at. Feel free to come by." And his mom drove him up in the minivan. He got out in a full suit and handed us his resume. And we were so shocked, drinking our beer in coolers on pogo sticks. I just couldn't believe this kid. And so we said, "Sure, we'll give you a shot. We can start by setting up some gigs." Well, he knew more classic rock and music than I knew at 14, and I had been DJing for well over a decade at that point. So he went out and did 2 gigs and immediately started talking about how much of a raise he deserved. And how much more will I get paid if I own the equipment instead of using yours, and bought it regardless, and then argued with me for years about how much it was worth. Day one. And so, yeah, we were neck and neck for many years. That's how I met Kyle, though.
And just a true music lover, Kyle is, just like yourself, Sellen. So here's a loaded question. I want you to tell us what your ultimate concert experience would be like, and pretend it's Caribou Rocks the North 2021. You get to put the lineup together, who's opening, and then maybe just name a supporting opening band or two.
So I'm glad you sent me those questions yesterday, because that's a tough one. I like so much music. I love different genres. But if I had to, if I had a gun to my head and I had to pick, I would say, and this is crazy, this is obviously a pipe dream, but I would say opening act, AC/DC, followed by Def Leppard, followed by U2 in Dublin.
Oh, yeah.
I think that would be epic. But there's so many others, like, and we've seen Elton John here in Prince George. Well, I've seen Elton John 15 times in my life. Like, he's an amazing performer.
What would the best venue that you saw Elton John be?
It was at the time it was called the O'Keefe Centre in Toronto, so it was a small venue. I can't remember what it's called now. And he played with just one of his band members at the time, but it was small, it was intimate, that was a good show.
Nice.
But all of his shows were amazing.
Were you at the PG one?
I was in the Cougars box that night. We had a ball. That was a memorable experience.
Absolutely.
I have a picture of me and 2 of my friends wearing Elton John glasses at that concert.
Yeah, I got the 3rd row.
Yeah,
I got so lucky, just on the lottery, just buying the tickets, logging in. I got the 3rd row.
What year was that? 2009?
I don't know. Yeah, it was around. Oh, it was around 2009, because I was doing the promotions at the Riverstone at the time.
Yeah. Well, we were supposed to go March 28th, but then COVID hit. And then just recently I told Brooklyn, "Hey, we're still going to the concert. They've got a new date, February 14th, 2022.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we're still going, but we're just talking about what we're going to wear.
So in Prince George, if you could change anything about Prince George, if you were allowed to snap your fingers and change just one thing, what's the thing you would change about Prince George?
So there's an easy answer to that, because we've been sort of working on that for the last 4 to 6 months. But if we could change anything in Prince George, I'd like to change or have a positive effect on homelessness in this town. That's a big deal to me. So, it's nice that we're doing things in Africa, but it's so important that we do things at home. And so we try to support this town as much as we can because the town has given us so much. But there are people in this town that don't have basic needs, whether it's water or washroom facilities, whatever it might be. And it's a difficult subject because I didn't realize what a complex subject that it is. And a friend of mine and I have talked to a number of agencies in this town to see what kind of an effect we can have. And so if there was one, it would be homelessness in Prince George. Nobody should be homeless. Everybody should have a roof over their heads at night.
Especially in northern BC.
Especially in northern BC.
I mean, homeless in Hawaii is very different than homeless at -40 in Prince George, BC.
Much different. But, and to your point, there's homelessness everywhere. Like I was in LA a couple of years ago, and there are homeless people on the bridges across the freeways in tents. So much different. You're right, but they're still without a home.
Yeah, for sure. And I would agree with you and resonate with you, especially now that, our office is here downtown in downtown Prince George. And you kind of, when you start hanging out downtown more, you start seeing it and you can't help but start to wonder, how can we have a change? And I'm going to resonate with you on that it's on top of our mind.
Well, and again, I think we can, if the individual wants help, I don't want to say help because it's not help, a hand up, a hand up, I want to be there for that person. There are a lot of people on the street, from what we've been told, that's a choice. And if that's a choice, well, I'm not going to go against anybody's choices because that's none of my business. But if somebody wants a hand up, I want to be there for them for sure. But it's a difficult journey. And I've lost my train of thought, so I was going to say something else.
Well, you're definitely somebody who really enjoys helping other people. And I could see throughout my own life, I've always attributed a lot of value to mentorship. And you have very inspiring individuals like Brooklyn and others who you can provide that mentorship to. Receiving mentorship is also equally as important. So do you still have people in your life today who you're going to for counsel, to solicit feedback, to maybe run an idea past before you make a big decision?
All the time, for sure, all the time. I do nothing on my own. I do nothing on my own. I talk to the people that are closest to me. I talk to my general manager. Him and I have these conversations behind closed doors all the time. Some of my management team and I, and then people like the two of you, people like Kyle Sampson. There are a lot of people that are well connected in town to make a difference, for sure.
Equally as important as mentorship is also everyday productivity. And I feel you're somebody that thrives on everyday productivity. You mentioned it before. You could have retired already if you wanted to. But there's some people that just thrive off of this productivity, and they need it as part of their day, and it releases those positive brain chemicals. With that said, do you have any large goals coming up, or things that you've been working on for a while that are in the pipeline? You might not be able to talk about them, but do you have some pretty big goals that you've set that are coming to fruition?
I hope we can get a groundswell of support for this homelessness piece, and we got to figure it out, and nobody's really figured it out. We've talked to a lot of people in town. We've talked to a lot of agencies in town. And they're all fighting for the same dollar, so it's difficult and it makes it even more complex. But we got to figure that out. So we're in the midst of that, and because I can't do much overseas right now, that's sort of been a focus. But overseas is a whole nother story, and with the demise of it's making it difficult too, because we started a couple of projects. So the hospital in Haiti's one, at least they have a solar panel system now, but it needs to be rebuilt, and we're hoping to do that in the future. And there's a number of contacts we already have in Haiti, and I want to get down to Haiti too to see what we're talking about. we're in the midst of building 2 water projects, water treatment plants, one in Kenya, not far from where Brooklyn and I were, and that one's going to come to fruition. But there was another one that we wanted to build in Ecuador, of all places, and I was in Ecuador 2 years ago in November, and another young lady, a mutual friend of ours, came with me on that trip, and we were in so many villages that didn't have running water, and that absolutely got to me. And right now that project is kind of lost, and we got to figure out where it is and who's going to do it. The Mark and Craig Kielberger, who are the founders of We, are very good friends of mine after the experiences I've shared with them over the years. And I've even said to them, you know what, it doesn't matter to me if We picks up these projects or Joe Blow Charity picks them up, but they got to be done because these people have no water. And I went down there making a promise to them saying I was going to get water into their villages, and that has not come to fruition yet. So that keeps me up at night. A lot of things keep me up at night.
And that's the definition of integrity, is when saying you're going to do something and following through, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That doesn't mean it's done yet, though, but we do live in different times, and we have to be patient, unfortunately.
But I'll give you a quick example of what saddens me about the water treatment plant. We were in the middle of the Amazon jungle. It was crazy where the location we were. When you look on a map now, you think, no way were we there, but we were. And it was hot, and you were always wet. Either it was pouring rain or it was so humid you were sweating all day long. Anyway, and they were we stayed at a camp, and the people, they were very kind to us. They, in the mornings they were offering us cappuccinos. I'm like, what? Out in the middle of nowhere in the Amazon jungle, and you're offering us cappuccinos? Meanwhile, downstream, not 15 minutes, they don't have any water. And talk about feeling guilty. And it's awful. So one morning we went to a gentleman's property, Miguel and Maria, and they were the sweetest couple ever. And we hauled water into their home, which is in the middle of nowhere. And they sort of, I'll call it their outside living room. They had us there, and they shared fruit with us, and we were having drinks with them, and they were sharing their stories with us through an interpreter. And Miguel was telling us how they had lived somewhere else previously, and they had a well dug, so they had water. But when they moved to this area, they had no running water. And they went to the government for water, and they made promises that they couldn't even budge on. And then finally, we came into play. We came in once and saw the need and knew they had to do something. But not until their youngest daughter ingested water from the Amazon River and passed away.
No.
So that's the story we heard, and I thought, this just can't happen. This is ripping my heart out. And that's not being a philanthropist. That's not being anything except a human being.
Yeah.
So now, and Miguel should have been a very, very bitter man, but he kept thanking us for getting the water to his place. So I have a picture of his tap, and that's the whole story, is this water.
I think the kind of overarching feel I get is, one thing is, like, you could have suspected and I wouldn't have known if you just write a check because it's part of a corporate obligation or, part of a corporate marketing strategy. Which I'm famous for talking about philanthropy as a form of marketing. I'd rather spend my money doing charity and get recognitions to build my business, just purely because you're going to advertise either way. But I am glad to know and really get the sense and understand how core it is to you as a human being. And I think that's what I'm going to take away from this conversation, is that it's a genuine care for the world. And I'm really glad to know that. And now I understand why Kyle and other people I know, like Karen, respect you so much, because that's not something I would have gotten. And I hope that becomes what comes out of this podcast. If 2 people ever listen to this, that's fine, because now I have a better understanding of what makes you tick, and that's what I wanted to get from this. So I just wanted to say thank you very much for sharing that.
And another beautiful part of philanthropy and giving back to the community is the friendships you build. And one thing that really stands out to me is wearing my UMBC Timberwolves hoodie right now. Shout out to Rich Abney for doing a great job with communications up there. But every single legacy breakfast, which is presented by Canadian Tire, Laura Lynn, another friend of ours at the table here, takes a couple of minutes to thank all the sponsors, but then she goes in depth about you, saying what the friendship that she's built with you over the years means to her as an individual, not as the director of athletics at UMBC, as a human being, what your friendship means to her.
Scott, you have a remarkable memory. And it's funny that you talk about Laura Lynn. We were just texting each other this morning, and she's a very special lady too, but it takes all these special people to make things happen. So, this respect and love and all that kind of stuff, that's all a two-way street. Because if it weren't, we'd never make anything happen. That's why Prince George is so special. There's so many people in this town that want to do good things for people and have a positive effect on their community.
But it could have been I guess what I was trying to point out, it could have been just as plausible or easy to believe that you're just some asshole. Or that you're some nice guy. Some people might still
think that.
Well, that's the whole point. That there is a story behind people and that there is way more. I had no idea why you do what you do or how much you do and how much it actually means to you. And
and everybody has a story. Everybody has a story.
And hopefully Crazy Damn Canadians gets that story. And
absolutely. And you mentioned volunteers earlier, and that's where I feel like you look at an event like Relay for Life here in Prince George, and as a donor, you see firsthand the hundreds and hundreds of people, volunteers that put their energy behind that event every year. And in a large part, that's what you want to help. You want to help all these volunteers that are putting 100%. Their energy in, all the cancer survivors that are going to be out there, all the people telling and sharing their stories. That's the personification of
and those people work tirelessly every event. Like they are incredible people. That's why I say we sort of do the easy work by writing a check, and that's why for me I have to be involved in some way. Like for many years for Cops for Cancer, I drove the truck that carried the bikes in it, and I loved doing that, and I loved hanging out with the cops at night and hearing all their stories. And some of their stories were worse than mine.
But they're learning experiences too, right?
Oh, they're all learning experiences. Everything's a learning experience. It started with my dad, who was the biggest arsehole of all mankind. But I learned a lot from him.
Yeah.
Yeah. If there's any kind of advice that you could offer somebody looking to enter entrepreneurship, or they might already be in the infancy stages of their own business, what would it be? Because we've talked a lot about philanthropy and the importance of giving back in community, but there's a lot of people out there that would look to a person like you for entrepreneurship advice. Is there anything that you'd advise?
I don't know. I think it's important that it's not just about the money. Time is huge. That's a huge. Time is always a huge gift. I have 3 goddaughters in Kitchener-Waterloo today. And every Christmas, we don't give each other gifts, but we give each other the gift of time. So I spend, a day with each of my goddaughters over Christmas because that's the gift, and it doesn't matter what we're doing. So that's important. It's kind of like Simon and Fraser Lodge or any place like that. And obviously, today we can't do it, but once COVID settles down, we'll be able to do it again. And just show up and be present. And it doesn't have to be about money. If you want to give out money, there's lots of agencies that will be happy to take the support for sure. And to me, Prince George has always been a community that's rallied together no matter what happens, and they've supported lots of causes, and that's huge. So you don't have to look too far to find those things for sure.
Yeah, and it's a different world now that we're living in. It's a COVID-19 global pandemic we're living, but there's also good to come out of that, where personally I cherish the memories that we were able to generate in the past even more today. When you look back at galas, like a Citizen of the Year gala or a Taste of India or a UMBC Legacy Breakfast, where you see large groups of people enjoying each other's company, it does make you cherish those memories to a greater altitude. Is there anything that stands out in the year 2020 as a major positive for you, despite being in the middle of a global pandemic?
Yeah, I learned a lot through the epidemic. And there are things where I did not want to waste my time and come out the other side having nothing to show for. So I've done a lot of things this year. When Brooklyn and I were away in Africa last year on the plane back, we both made lists of what we had to get accomplished this year. And we've both been through our lists, and we've pretty much accomplished most of those things. Now we're going to make a new one soon. And 2020 showed me that I don't have to travel like a maniac going back and forth to Toronto for the Pinball Clemens Foundation, because I did a lot. I was in Toronto almost every other week, at least every third week. You don't have to do that. We all have Zoom, and that works great, and you still have that personal connection with people. Mm-hmm. Now, would I rather be there and shake their hand or hug them or what have you? 100%. I miss them all desperately. But at least we have Zoom, and that's important. So I spend a lot of time on Zoom calls these days, but it's more effective time than spending time in a rental car or an airplane or whatever.
We found that too. Yeah. Our business could have gone way down. Mm-hmm. Financial advisors in a pandemic and a global financial collapse should have been devastating. But ironically, it enables Zoom, enables us the opportunity to reach out to people that we would normally drive 8 hours to see, 7 hours.
Yeah. And
we actually ended up 20% up over last year just because we were able to reach out to people.
Well, and the same holds true for a lot of not-for-profits. I know I can tell you quite frankly that with Pinball Clemens Foundation, we are also up 20%. And a lot of that is because we didn't put on events, so our expenses were way low. So it was an extraordinary year for us. In the
a lot of businesses in town have made more money with people spending more money, not traveling.
Yep.
Owning a RV store sure was a good year.
Definitely. So Dave, I think we're at the point where we probably have enough time for one more question each. So I'm going to let you think about yours, make it a good one, while I provide Selen with a nice and easy one. What's your favorite movie?
Oh my goodness.
Or maybe not so easy.
Well, my favorite movie of all time was Apocalypse Now. That was my favorite movie with the Vietnam War and that kind of stuff. You don't even know what I'm talking about. No.
It's a classic.
It's a classic.
Okay, your last question. Mine'll be, it's Crazy Damn Canadians. So we asked this of Shirley. I'd like to know if you could meet just one Canadian, dead or alive, doesn't matter. What would be the Canadian you would want to have a conversation with? Who would be the Canadian that you'd want to have a conversation with? You can say me.
I have a feeling this one might be a musician.
You know what? That's funny you just say that, because I was going to say Neil Peart, who used to be the drummer of Rush, and he passed away this summer. So I would say him. He was a very intellectual man. He was very artistic. We were hoping that Rush would do one more show as a benefit for the Pinball Clemens Foundation. But they split up. They didn't split up. Neil Peart's hands were full of arthritis, and he couldn't drum anymore, so he just couldn't do it.
Somebody has significance, or they made a lot of impact in their life when they pass away, and the outpouring of support and people sharing their stories with this individual manifest. Yeah. When this gentleman passed away, I wasn't too familiar with his music, but I just had my social media channels flooded with tribute posts to this individual, with people talking about what kind of impact that he had on their lives. It's a really, truly amazing to see.
He really did.
Selen, I'm so glad we did this. Really appreciative that you came in. I know you're hesitant to talk about yourself in this type of format, but I think it was an excellent conversation, and I hope people get something from it. I think you got a cool story, and you're having a global impact, and I think that really matters. And I'm glad that people will now know that, because more people will hopefully engage with you if you share those projects. People like myself love joining in on them, right? And that's the key. you got to let those be known. You can get Brooklyn to put the posts out.
I absolutely agree. And, similar to what Kyle said in our phone conversation yesterday, is you're a kick-ass human being. It's as simple as that. And thank you so much for being our guest on Crazy Damn Canadians.
I appreciate you guys too, and I appreciate what you've said. And it's people like you and this community that define who I am too. So I have the community to thank for that too. So thank you.